Mulan 2020, the live action, the film that Disney is remaking, has come under fire recently. There's a lot of um, civil unrest over in Hong Kong and China right now. Um, it's been difficult to see how these issues around some of the legislation in China around like the draft over there and how it's allowed criminal suspects in Hong Kong to be extradited to mainland China and things like that for having to serve. Uh, it's been difficult to see how the government and police force over there has been handling that, and it's caused a lot of discord, a lot of conflict. And one of the conflicts that's come out of it has been around Liu Yifei, the lead actress playing Mulan, coming out in support of the government over there. And it's led to a Boycott Mulan movement on social media. Dave, are you going to boycott Mulan? Where are you falling in this?
Yeah. Very interesting, frankly unexpected thing, because obviously it's coming from the Hong Kong folks who are protesting, but support of the Chinese government and the authoritarian state that it is not uncommon from famous Chinese people. Jackie Chan has done this multiple times, and the Boycott Mulan thing. I think the goal was to have this permeate over here in the West, right? Because Hong Kong, specifically as a box office, right? Not all of China, but just Hong Kong itself. I mean, I think Beauty and the Beast, which is the remake, which is like the 16th highest grossing film of all time, that made under $10 million in Hong Kong. So Hong Kong is such a small piece of the pie that Disney would never, and they haven't commented at all on this, they would never give any credence to this. Just because it's not in their business interest, right? But it's been weaponized the other way. Support Mulan. That's what the mainland China pro-Chinese government people are saying. And it's kind of weird that Disney, a company that doesn't want to be political at all, now it's in their best interest to appease the authoritarian Chinese government directly. Mm-hmm. They already take advantage of their movie-going public, right? But now it's like to go to Mulan apparently is a pro-communist, a pro-police state act now. If you're in China.
Tough look. Yeah, Disney reminds me a lot of Taylor Swift in terms of almost too big to fail, and tries to remain as neutral as possible to not ruffle feathers and just have the biggest fan base it can. Yeah, it's interesting because I guess as I think about this, it's I certainly don't agree with some of what I know of the legislation being proposed over there, and it seems like the Chinese government's like you said, authoritarian perspective and way of handling their business has been exploiting these stars, because perhaps they do actually agree, but I feel like it's more like they're pressured into saying these things in fear of retribution. And I think Disney, in terms of how they can, I feel like they're in a very difficult situation in terms of how they can respond. Most likely they're going to try to ignore this and hope it goes away. But if it gets closer to that time and tensions are still high, it feels like they're going to have to say something. And I wonder at that time how they would speak out, or if they would try to take some perspective to try to find some middle ground in this. Because I can't see them speaking out against it.
Well, in the movie Mulan remake, which is already done being filmed and all that, doesn't come out till March 27th next year. Will the Hong Kong protests still be this active and in the news that far in advance? Probably not. No one expects the Hong Kong conflict with the rest of China to subside by then. Then the active protests and the occupying of places like the airport. So I doubt that's still directly happening day to day come March, right? So
never know.
I mean, yeah, it's possible, but I just wonder if the movement is as, pronounced at that time. I'm sure it probably will certainly come back up again, but the goal would be to get the Western audiences and other audiences to ignore it. But I just don't. There's just not going to be enough exposure to why this is a problem for some people, and people are just going to show up. And I mean, let's be real for a second. The Lion King remake, despite critical derision, is about to be the 6th highest grossing movie of all time. And like I said, Beauty and the Beast is top 20. Jungle Book was almost $1 billion. Mulan probably won't make Lion King money, but it's going to be a huge hit. And it's really hard to put a dent in that. So I would be surprised if Disney says anything at all. But it is notable that back at D23, when they showed footage, their star, their Mulan, was not present.
Yeah.
So, I mean, it's not like they're not aware, but
I wonder if tensions still are high, if they would consider pushing it back at all. Now, I know that might affect their timeline in terms of how they're rolling these out, but it's also the sort of thing where they rolled out 3 live action Disneys at that point. You also have the new Lady and the Tramp hitting the streaming service, Disney Plus at that point. It feels like if they needed to, they could just push this off until frustrations around it subsided. But it's not the sort of thing that I think will go away. Whenever the movie drops, it's going to pop back up. Right. I don't think there's a way they can avoid it. So it'll be interesting to see how they deal with it. But Disney just in general, man. How much more do you think they need to possess to officially become a monopoly in this culture? It's just crazy.
Well, that's the thing. It's like they already dominate the box office to such an extreme, and I expect their market share to go down next year. They just don't have as an impressive a slate come next year. No Star Wars movie, no Lion King remake, only 2 Marvel movies this time. It's not 2019 for them next year, but
right.
Warner Brothers, a lot of their big stuff either flopped or was only a modest success this year. That's now we want to see. If anything, you want WB to be like the other pillar. But we just saw CBS and Viacom merge, and we just talked about how Amazon might be powering down their film acquisitions, and it's hard to see Disney not maintain this dominance for who knows how long, man. I mean, we already know their calendar after from 2021 on. It's Star Wars or Avatar every other year for 6 years. So and that's the holiday sector. We know the MCU will take care of the rest of the year. So it's pretty. I guess it's bleak. It's bleak if you're into other stuff.
Yeah, and I think that ties in nicely the mid-tier movies like we just talked about. It's, if you have one company that makes such high profits off its movies, it's not going to want to invest in the movies that will only make a small profit.
Right.
And others follow suit.